Welcome to the Elevated Trader Podcast. I am Dr. Kristen Kidgel.
And I am Tracy Ball. Join us every week as we journey into becoming better traders.
We believe becoming better traders involves elevating our skill, mindset, and our health. In each episode, we will discuss the current book we are exploring, and we invite you to join us on this journey.
Are you ready to elevate your trading, mindset, and health to the next level? Let's do this.
Welcome back to the Elevated Trader Podcast. We are in part 6 of the book Fit for Life 2. I read Fit for Life 2. Tracy Ball read Fit for Life 1. And my book's a little longer than yours, isn't it?
A lot longer. I only got one section out of your book is what my book was.
That is true. That is true. I highly recommend if you're going to pick one of the books, I would pick this one because there is an entire section that covers everything that was in your book. I mean, obviously not everything, but listen, this book's thick and the font's super tiny. So I'm just going to say that. So again, it's Fit for Life 2. The authors are Harvey and Marilyn Diamond. So before we jump in to this final episode around this book, let me know what's going on with you. You've been trying some of the diets, and not the diets, but the recipes that came in your book and all those things. What's going on?
Still plugging away with it. So the one that I'm staying consistent with is the fruit, not only eating fruit in the morning and never combining it with anything else. And as I learn some of the other rules and establish them, I'll become more consistent with it. So that's kind of my goal. I've taken one that's the easiest to do for me right now and applying that consistently, and I'm building discipline into the routine, and I'm paying close attention to how my body feels to see what works and what doesn't work. How about you?
Well, first you use the word rules. And so I find that interesting because is it rules of biochemistry? Is it rules of science? Are these just rules that they made up? Like, how would you define your term that you just used as rules?
Well, based on my understanding from the book, these are rules of science. So they've done the research, and this is what they're telling you works, and it has a bunch of stuff that backs it. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, I'm no scientist. I don't know how to duplicate the research or to even confirm that the research is right or wrong, but I can test it on my own body and see whether or not it makes a difference. And that's really going to be the key for me of whether or not I continue or not continue is how I feel and how I look. So.
Okay, so you've been probably eating with some of these changes for about 4 weeks, give or take. How are you feeling? What do you think?
So right now, I think the biggest thing that I'm noticing is instantaneous reactions when I don't eat this way. So I think I'm becoming more sensitive, or more aware anyway, of how some of the bad combinations, my body reacts to them. So I think that's the first step for me becoming more aware and awoke, I guess, to what we are doing or what this book is trying to tell me. So I'm a little bit more alert to that. I guess that's the best way to put it.
I can understand that completely, because that's probably one of the very first things I ever noticed when I read the book that you have before this book was out, and it's been like over 30 years. It was a long time ago, and the main gist of it, and I don't like, if I just say the main gist is food combining, that's really shortchanging all the amazing data that's in these books. So take that with a grain of salt. But the food combining has to do with the proteins and carbs and the fruit, and just like how are you eating it, and what are you matching up your foods on your plate, and so to speak. So I definitely have held true to that a lot, and I do not eat fruit at night after eating. Like, there are things that when you read this and you understand that what's happening when you ingest some of this, you will make changes. And if you don't, it's worth trying it. I 100% agree that it's worth trying it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But that's when you do notice, you're like, oh, like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. Because you did try it. I think it's, like I said, I think it's worth at the very least reading it, getting a ton of knowledge, and then trying things out here.
Exactly. And it is called Fit for Life, not Eat for Life. So there is more to being fit than just food.
Yes. which is a good segue to where we ended the last one when we were discussing the exercise part and chapters in this book. And then the remainder of today's episode is going to fly through, buckle up, the ends of talking about the importance of sunshine, loving relationships, cleanliness, quiet moments, animal products. We're just going to hit on where there's a topic. It talks about, for our children is the title of that one. And then some detoxification. That's always actually a really big question. It was really popular for a while. I don't know if people are still doing it. And then I'll just close with some other things that are in here. But let's just jump right in, shall we?
Give me your highlights.
Okay. Let's see here. Highlights. Well, do you want to do the highlights of the exercise? No. Let's do the highlights. Let's just jump right into, hold on a second. I got to get to that page. Chapter 11 is sunshine. Now, I don't think a lot of people realize that 15 to 20 minutes of sunshine a day is super important for your hormones, actually your vitamin D levels, and all kinds of other health benefits. They go into it deep. It's worth reading that chapter. But one of the things I found interesting was time of day. There's so much fear, especially, I don't know about where you live and where you've grown up, but living and growing up in Florida, there's a lot of people that live in fear of the sun. Melanomas and basal, cell carcinomas and all these different things where because it's a lot of a skin issue, they do tie it to exposure to the sun. Large amounts of wrinkling is tied to the sun. The brown spots are tied to the sun. But the sun has so many health benefits. I mean, think about like when children are born and they're yellow from their liver issues or bilirubin issues, right? And they're told to be put in the sun. It doesn't have to be direct sun, but it's near a window where the sun is coming through. So one of the highlights in this particular chapter was all the amazing, wonderful research about sunlight, of how it thwarts depression and all of these things, right? But that the best sun rays are first thing in the morning. Ironically, that now that I've changed my ways with some new habits since the miracle morning, pretty much, getting up, getting outside, and most of the time I'm up for the sunrise. Because I do that often enough, I have a silly tan line. And you're not even thinking that you're getting any sun, like it's 7 a.m., it's 6:45, it's really early in the morning. And here I am getting this sports bra tan line. It's like horrible, but at the same time, it's wonderful because it's almost addicting, that sun. How are you with sun? I know you like it warm, but you live where it's cold.
I do live where it's cold. No, I unfortunately do not get sun in the morning because I'm up at 3:15 in the morning. So it is still hecka dark when I'm up. But, I love the sun. I don't spend a lot of time out in it because, well, where I come from, you're not dealing with, you are dealing with melatonin or you are dealing with skin cancers and things like that because anytime you're in the sun, that's a risk. But I think people are more afraid of frostbite because that's a bigger issue, just being exposed in some of the elements, at least through the winter. And then you're dealing with snow blindness and all that type of stuff because where I came from, and I've just recently moved to a much milder climate, but there was snow probably 8 to 10 months of the year sometimes. At least that's how it felt. And so, yeah, you're dealing with all those different things. But I have to say that because living in the north as well, you don't have as much daylight. The sun drops a lot quicker than it does when you're in a more southern hemisphere. So I've noticed a significant improvement in my mood, in just even how I feel like eating, things like that, because it affects that. When I'm up in the north, I feel much more like hibernating. I feel much more like storing food for the winter. I feel much like I just don't have that energy. I don't know if you've noticed, but in the summertime, you feel like you want to eat fresher foods. You feel like you want to eat less. The heavy foods don't fit well. And I don't know if that's a temperature thing or what, but I noticed a huge difference during the summer from the winter months of how I feel like eating and how I feel emotionally. And in Canada, seasonal affective disorder is a very, very common and very talked about. And that is very common in the northern provinces, in the northern part of the provinces, in the northern territories, where you just don't get a lot of sun. And they'll encourage you to have light therapies, etc., to try and help elevate that mood. So they've recognized that there's an actual mood disorder that's associated from a lack of sun. And I am very aware of it. And even when I go tanning in a tanning booth, because I do that, I notice a huge improvement in just my overall mood. I go for red light therapy, which isn't a tanning part, but it gives you a red light, and it's supposed to improve your skin and things like that. And there's a huge improvement in your mood. So I think there's some validity to it, and I'm sure that all of our listeners would agree and see some of the same results when they discuss their experience in the sun. Yeah.
Well, let me wrap up this chapter with this one paragraph that talked about a really interesting study that I circled, highlighted, starred. And it was actually in 1973, which was near the time you and I were born. Ironically, it was at a school in Sarasota County. So that is probably an hour and a half drive south of me. So it's really close to me. So they equipped 2 classrooms with full spectrum light that simulated natural light, and 2 other classrooms they just left with the regular fluorescent light. A 5-month study. Okay? So basically the gist of it was the extremely hyperactive children calmed down completely. Not all of them, but several of them, they said, and were able to overcome their learning disabilities. What? And then time-lapse cameras were used in each classroom to record incidences of disruptive behavior, and the fluorescent classrooms always had more.
Isn't that interesting? Because fluorescent lighting's also been associated with headaches. And
for sure. Because they flicker and your brain can count them.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure. No, there's definitely some benefits and advantages. And you know what? The sun is like anything else in moderation. And if you plan for it and you prepare for it, it's absolutely beneficial. Absolutely. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of research. I recommend that people go learn a little bit more about exposure to the sun, length of time, and thinking that if you're wearing sunscreen and all these different things, that it's actually keeping you, keeping you out of harm, and that's not necessarily the case. But I know too much about that to start an argument with most people. It just gets out of hand. So the next chapter, moving right along, is loving relationships. So, I mean, this is kind of obvious, right? I mean, let's be honest with you. It's really, are you in a loving relationship? That will totally affect your health. And this isn't just like in your home, right? This is at work, right? This can be in any situation where you're around people, even if it's intermittently. So many people don't get along with their parents. So many people don't get along with their siblings. Who are you spending your time with? Who is sucking energy from you, and who's giving and who's filling you with energy? One of the things that, hold on, I want to just finish with this and then you can run with it, is we forget that relationship with ourselves. The hardest relationship that you and I typically have in our lives is our relationship with ourselves, because he's like, you got to love yourself. If you think you're going to try to love other people and you don't love yourself, it isn't going to happen. You just got to figure it out. So where does that take you? You were having some thoughts there.
I was having some thoughts, but you started out by saying that it kind of makes sense right off the bat, that loving relationships make sense. But here's the thing. I don't think it's as common sense as you might think. I think that first of all, defining what love is can be a challenge for a lot of people. And I think there's a lot of individuals that may be in relationships that they think are loving, but they aren't. And one of the things that you said had to do with whether or not they are sucking energy from you or whether they're not. And I think that is a real good definition of what love is and whether that relationship is loving or not loving. So because like I said, there's a misconstrued, even through media and whatever, like how we define and decide whether we're in love or whether we love somebody or whether that other person loves us can be totally 100% dictated by, even from the root of it, how do we feel about ourselves, right? So that's a complex thing, but if we just break it down to the energy level, whether or not somebody is giving you, whether you feel energized when you're with somebody or whether you feel drained afterwards, that could be a starting point to decide whether or not this is a loving relationship or not a loving relationship. So that's kind of where it took me, that needs a little bit more, it's not as common sense. So I think it's a good discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I found interesting that they mentioned, and it is totally worth wrapping your head around, is what is your posture when you're communicating with somebody? You know, where are you even present? Are you distracted by your phone? Is there a game on? You know, like, to me, a loving relationship or a respectable relationship, I guess, you know, is, especially if you want to be heard, is just to make sure there's no distractions. You're not distracted. The other individual, like, I will always use this with anybody I'm really wanting to talk to. If they're not present with me, it's obvious. And I'm just like, I'll wait. And they're like, no, go ahead. I'm almost done with this. I'm like, I'll wait. Because it means that much to me that we're present and I don't have to repeat myself. And I'm the first person. If you don't make sure that you don't have my full attention, I will literally just hear some of it. It's horrible.
It is.
But if you're going to come in talking to me and I'm multitasking all these things and you don't wait for me to stop, there's no way I'm going to get all that data you're dumping on me.
It is. And for sure, I mean, you can tell, absolutely tell right off the bat. I always know when my mom's on her video game thing, playing her little slot machines, even though we're on the phone. I can't see her, but I can tell that she's playing her game. And I'll say, Mom, you're playing a game, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, yeah, okay, well, I'll call you later, because I can tell that she's not present. But you know what? When you say that, that leads me to kind of a fear that I have about our society as whole, because I feel like that feeling that we just described, or that you just described, is kind of not the norm anymore. It's becoming the exception to the rule. And with a lot of these, I feel like we're kind of fighting against the trend of society, and it's becoming exhausting to try and hold on to that. But yes, it starts with you, and, you know, give what you expect. And if you want to be heard, then you need to be listening. So I think that it's a great point, something that needs to be thought about. And, you know, for the people in your life, it's important to talk about. It's one of the things that I'm struggling with my kids. So is trying to make sure that they recognize that they need to be present in, and it's so hard because, like I said before, I can be just as bad because I feel like it's a losing battle, and it's just, you want to give into it and say, forget it, whatever, let's quit fighting, let's just join them. And that's a fear that I have for where our society is heading. But anyway, that's a tangent. So,
well, yeah, you can always attempt to be, you know, not play a part of it, and people will know that about you, and then they'll respect it about you. You know, one of the other things before we close up this particular chapter about, the title is Loving Relationships, and it goes into all kinds of different things, but I think, and it talks about avoiding the negative, and there's a whole section around that, and that's a mental game. And I feel like a lot of us, and we're talking about like what's the norm, right? I feel like a lot of people just don't even realize, not only do they have negative self-talk, but they talk negative about other things, which would be gossip, or just making a judgment call on something that's happening, or having, you know, I think it's a lot about monitoring yourself and catching yourself. And I would challenge anybody to do like an annual 2-week, this is for 2 weeks, I am not talking negative about anything. And that will be really easy for some people. I mean, honestly, I have met people that this will be easy for them to wake up all day and stay in that. But they are few and far between. Matter of fact, I just would like to also highlight that this book is about health and the patients in 25 plus years of practice that are the happiest and just balanced. Like, I've learned so much from people like that, and they're in the older community when I see it the most. And not that they didn't have hard lives and hard times and loss and things like that. It's just that they have control of their happiness because that's an internal attitude, right? So they tend to heal faster and live a healthier life. And there's probably a ton of science behind that, but literally seeing it for myself and identifying that, it is something to behold and learn from. So just food for thought.
It's good food.
Or thought for food. Okay, so the next chapter is the title of it is Cleanliness, Pleasant Surroundings. Again, like, do you make your bed in the morning? Is your bathroom clean? Is your kitchen clean at the end of every night? Do you reorganize your sofa after you've trashed the pillows and the blankets and stuff? I don't know. I'm pretty sure my mother is pretty tidy. Yeah, I'll shout out to my mom. I grew up in a tidy home, and so that has definitely been a good example for me. And I do carry those habits on. And I feel like when things are dirty, or I'm not like crazy about it, but there's just something about it. I'm like, oh, it's just really easy to kind of throw the bed together. Not like my mother, where she puts 8 pillows. Like I just want something made. Like I want my clothes put away. I like the couch to look decent. Like I like the counter. Like I like the bathroom to be tidy, and dirty clothes have a place and clean clothes have a place. But what's really funny is my daughter is in her 2nd week of college, and she's like, we're talking every day. That's something I asked of her for as I wean myself down a little bit from her being so far away. But she said, one thing I didn't know about myself, Mom? And I'm like, what? She goes, I'm clean. She's like, I've already cleaned my bathroom twice. And I was like, who are you? Because she's messy. Like, she's the typical teenager. Why is your wet towel on the floor again? Kind of kid. Yep. Why am I picking up 3 glasses of water in your bedroom? Anyways, that is just kind of funny. And the pleasant surroundings is kind of important. And I don't know if people realize that. Like, look around your room. Is there a plant? Is it messy? Is there a picture over there that gives you the heebie-jeebies? You don't want to look at that picture anymore. Is there something that you need to alter and change and, make anew? I think that's huge, to be honest with you.
I think that one of the things that you could actually take into consideration or take a step further than just the cleanliness or even the surroundings, but actually putting some more intention into the room. And I really paid attention to this when I went to the island and saw that each of the rooms had a name and there was thought put into it and what have you. And we've been talking about naming some of our rooms as well, and really setting them up for the intent and making sure that everything that's going into them is intentional for that purpose. And really the name comes down to, what do we want to get out of our room, for instance? So let's say we're talking about our master bedroom. What exactly do we want when we're in that master bedroom? What are the feelings associated when we want? Do we want, what do we want it to be associated, right? And from there, you can start to look at the environment inside the room and see whether or not it is steering towards that goal or whether it's taking from it. And you can start to assess from there. So I think I'd like to take it just a little step further than what we've been talking about there, but I love it. And not only that, I also think that that your surroundings, your pleasantness and your cleanliness, it also applies to personal hygiene. And I think that, even getting up in the morning, even if you work from home, whatever, it's so easy just to stay in your pajamas, and you might look clean. I'm not saying that you look messy or slobby or anything like that, but there is something to be said about actually getting dressed for the day, washing your face, having a shower, whatever it might be, brushing your teeth, all of those different routines and things that give you a sense of power power to take on the day, even power for preparation if anyone was to stop in. And that's kind of the way that my mom raised me, was if anyone shows up at the door, just come on in. You don't need to you don't need to close the door and say, just hold off. I got to clean up, right? It's already done.
I got to get dressed.
It's already done. And you're ready for the day. You're ready for anything that comes your way. And, some people talk about luck. People are lucky. This is lucky, lucky, lucky. And I was also raised to believe that luck is really preparation for opportunity. And if you are prepared for your day, then anything that comes your way, you're going to be ready to take on that challenge, that whatever it might be. Maybe who knows, maybe some big shot knocks on your door. Maybe it's Ed McMahon, right? To give you, I don't know if he does that anymore.
Wait, you're in Canada. How do you know about Ed McMahon?
So anyway, the point being is that opportunity may show up at any time, any moment. And if you're prepared for it, you have the best opportunity of taking advantage of that. And that's kind of the deal. That's what I'm just trying to say.
Okay.
Right. So
I love that. And I think I want to circle back around on one of the things that you brought up, which is intention. You didn't really hound on it, but I would like to circle back around and hound on that a little bit, because intention is everything. And ironically, I just ordered the Dr. Emoto book, The Hidden Messages in Water. And this is the cover for those people, that are here and can see us. But basically, he taped all different types of words to bottles of water. So some of them were extremely positive and some were extremely negative. And then he froze it, and then he took pictures of the ice crystals, and it was amazing. And there's pictures in this book of the ice crystals. And then, which I didn't know, scanning through this book's not very big, you guys. I highly recommend you guys get this. Again, it's The Hidden Messages in Water. Matter of fact, maybe this would be fun to read.
I was going to say, why don't we read it?
We should. Okay, because this would be a really short read.
Yeah, we'll do an episode on it.
So, okay, cool. Because I didn't know this until skimming through this and looking at some of the beautiful freaking pictures. Look at this picture of this crystal, an ice crystal.
It's gorgeous.
So he played songs. So he played a Beatles song. It was, oh my gosh, which song was it? Now I can't find it really fast.
Okay, we'll cover it in an episode.
Okay, and then there was a Heartbreak Hotel, an Elvis song. And then he showed the two song crystals side by side, and one was really uplifting, and the crystal was gorgeous. And then the Heartbreak Hotel crystal was like all mangled. And I was like, this is nuts. But it's the intention that we put with the words.
Interesting.
So I labeled my water. Remember when we were, well, I remember when we were, even though you're doing it now, drinking a gallon of water a day? I kept looking at this water in the first week, and it would just irk me. And I would speak unkindly of it. I would have unkindly thoughts around it. I was like super annoyed at it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm ingesting this water. And it's holding, like, this book literally changed my life, okay? And my intention of my words. So I labeled it, love my water, and then my water rubbed off. And then I just left it with love, which is, you could still see that on there. Besides all these really fun stickers, people like think it's weird to put stickers on stuff, but all these stickers mean something to me. They all bring me joy. So the intention that this water goes down so much easier now, I'll never go back. I'm still, hanging out just under maybe a gallon a day of water without the challenge.
That's awesome. I love that point, and I think that is very, very, very important. And it's not just it's intention with words, period. We should be very cautious of our words. They have a lot of power.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that book's going to be good. Okay. Moving right along, next chapter. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these next few because, number one, they're controversial, but the data and the science, it was really good for me to reread about this stuff because I have my bachelor's in nutrition and I already know a lot about animal products and the research on our health and how it all ties in. And this chapter is short, you guys. Chapter 14 is about animal products. It's about meat. It's about dairy. I highly recommend you get more knowledge around it. It is tied to a ton of different cancers. So maybe I should just leave it at that. Do you want to say anything about that? Because I know there was a part in your book about it.
Well, I mean, the science that they showed, I wouldn't even call it science. It was kind of the common sense approach in my book around what makes sense, right from the biology of who we are and how we're capable, the fact that we need tools to even eat meat or to consume meat suggests that maybe we weren't designed to eat it. The fact that we need to cook it first. There's a bunch of different things, right?
Yep.
The one that really...
Our teeth design.
Yeah, exactly.
Our intestinal design, our acid design.
Exactly.
Like, there's a lot of common sense stuff in here.
So
but it's biochemistry.
My biggest takeaways, I think, from the sections when I read them were, number one, the understanding the acid and the alkaline. So your carbs are alkaline and your meats are acid, and mixing those together aren't good because it takes two different things that just end up neutralizing each other in order to digest, and they don't digest. So there's that part. Now, in my book, they basically told me that, they're not saying don't eat it, but maybe you shouldn't. And be careful what you eat it with. So that was a big takeaway.
And significantly less.
Yeah.
Really, really reduce it, because I don't know about in Canada, but down here in America, woo-wee, it's like every meal there's animal products.
Yeah, it is here
animal
too.
proteins.
Yeah, it is here.
Is it?
And then the other big takeaway was the dairy product. Now, one of the things that I really didn't know was even the structure of calcium in animal dairy versus human dairy. It's very different, and it's harder for us to digest. And I don't remember exactly what it said, but there's also an enzyme that we produce as children up until the age of 3 that help us digest our parents' milk or our mom's milk. And we stop producing that enzyme at the age of 3 because we're meant to be weaned off it. And after that, we're no longer supposed to be drinking it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that was discussed in there that really made my eyes open. And I already know that I react poorly to dairy. I know that I have significant more phlegm. I'm stuffed up. I've got more inflammation. I already know all of these things. And for a while, I was not eating any dairy other than yogurt for a very long time. And I noticed a huge difference. Now, I have since started eating all of that stuff again, and that's why I notice a huge difference, because I know what it was like before and what it's like after, and I need to get back to not eating it again. It's just, cheese is a tough one for me because I love cheese. So it's going to be one of those things that I have to power through and get back onto the path of success, because I know what it's like not to eat it, and I know what it's like to eat it, and I know there's a distinct difference between the two. And the only thing that you can do is try for yourself and see what the difference is. And when you try, it can't be like 2-3 days. It's got to be a few weeks. I ate like that for years, where I didn't eat dairy, and then I went for years eating dairy, and I have a pretty good understanding of what my body does when I'm on either. So.
Yeah, I specialize in helping people figure out what they're intolerant to, which is creating a lot of negative circumstances and reactions inside their body. And being lactose intolerant and allergic to dairy and intolerant to dairy, specifically cow, is huge. It's up there with peanuts, you guys. I'm sorry. Those people that don't believe that celiac and gluten, I'm not going to get into a lot of that here. I mean, my daughter, we found out when she was 12, but why can a lot of people that can't eat gluten in America eat gluten in Italy? Now, so the people that I talk to about this,
is that a processing issue?
It's how it's being grown. It's, if you really want to know, that's been a lot of stuff tied to stuff that's been GMO'd because it's altered, and not everybody can tolerate the altercation. So anyways, what I recommend for people that are struggling with eliminating and changing dairy, matter of fact, I've watched a woman who had a business where she grew up around dairy all day, every meal, is totally addicted to it, We were the same. We are the same exact age, and then started having all of these illnesses, and then learned about the intolerance testing, and then one of the things that she was allergic to was dairy, and so she had to stop eating it. And I watched her and literally held her hand through weeks of detoxification. Her body's reactions were off the chain. I'm talking full body inflammatory responses. I'm talking full body hives. I'm talking mental thoughts and like the brain was playing with her, the gut was playing with her skin, like the detox. You know, we hear about people detoxing off drugs and the horrible reaction to just medicines, you know, and steroids and things like that. But whatever they're putting in milk at the level in the years of, you know, just under 50 years at that point, she was consuming it. That detox was rough on her. And she's so much better. And she doesn't do that for a living anymore. She doesn't sell cheese anymore. She knew everything ins and outs of it. But one of the things that I thought was really cool that she taught me is the difference between the protein of what the cow milk contains versus like sheep or goat. And so she held up her hands and she gave me this analogy of, she goes, okay, so just imagine that the cow protein itself is huge. It's like big as a bowling ball. But that a goat and a sheep milk protein is really tiny, like a golf ball or a baseball or a racquetball. And she goes, that's why more and more people cannot do that higher protein as we get older, is because we can't break that down and the GI just struggles with it. So yeah, it's a big mucus producer. When I stopped, I was in high school dealing, because my sinuses every day were just like, this is horrible. And so my body's reaction is definitely to produce all that excess inflammation, but more of mucusy stuff. And so it's not uncommon. It's super, super common. I don't think people just even realize it.
That was actually the other thing that I want to circle back to protein, because you just mentioned protein. That was the other takeaway that I got from reading my book. And that was the fact that, you know, a lot of people eat meat. They eat dairy because they want to get protein. And what I didn't understand is that the actual protein in all meats and cheeses and all that have to be broken down first, and then into the basic elements of amino acids, and then they get recombined into proteins that are human digestible. So to break down animal protein, period, is a more energy exhausting process than utilizing just basic amino acids that you would get from other food sources and recombining them into protein, right? So it makes sense. You got to take the protein, break it down, and then turn it into protein again. Why not just avoid it?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it wraps up with children, and I think just setting yourself up and your kids up for success, and how nutrients are really, really important, and what they're eating is really important for their development, not just brain, but body and all those things. And I just implore you to think about, you know, how much sugar is in the kids' first meal of the day, you know, in cereals and Pop-Tarts. And listen, I grew up with Pop-Tarts, but I was also in my late teens and early 20s making huge nutritional differences. And I think, you know, comparing myself where I am now, I wouldn't go back there. Like, I think I value my body's chemistry and its ability to heal, because all these processes slow down as we age, right? They just do inevitably. We're not going to live forever. So all of this stuff has to slow down. So do we want it to slow down earlier in life, or, you know, or never? Do we want to speed it up? I think that's the question to be asked at this point.
For sure. I also know that as a child, there's probably a good chance that I would have fought it, but I know that I would have greatly appreciated it now had somebody taught me all of this stuff as a child. So you're probably sitting the same way, and hopefully all of our listeners are feeling the same way. I wish I'd learned this when I was younger, how to do it, because it's so much easier to learn as a child and maintain it than it is to learn it or to de-learn what you already know as an adult and then relearn as an adult some better habits. So much better if you can start them young. Do what's right?
Yeah, I've watched my children, be brought up in a certain way of eating that I had control over. And then when they got cars and I lost control of those situations, they definitely did a lot more fast food and, all the things, right? And so my son significantly paid for it, and we had to rectify some things. And now he lives in this light of knowing. And then when you make that decision, it's like know better, do better. And sometimes it's human nature. Like, I don't want to do better. I want to have that over there. He's in his early 20s. Actually, he's closer to mid-20s than really early 20s. But my daughter, now that she's 18, she's the one that's the celiac, and that's been, a challenge. And there's other things that came up on her testing. So she played that game with like, okay, well, now that I have the capability of running around and doing whatever I want, I'm going to try to eat this and I'm going to try to eat that, even though it's on that list, even though I know I'm not supposed to. She knows. And she has paid for it and she gets it. So it's a little trial and error for some people. By the way, Inner Health for You is a company that I adore. So it's Inner Health, the number 4, YOU.com, and get the home kits. Don't need a doctor. Just get the kit. If, again, I'm saying it fast, email me if you want more data. I'm happy to help you. It is my jam. I love teaching people about the importance of what they're consuming, because a lot of people just don't even realize that they're constantly consuming day in and day out stuff that's just trashing their bodies from the inside. So, which is not in this book, by the way, but it probably would be if it was written more today.
Well, there you have it, folks. That is Fit for Life. We are done. And next week, we will be back with a brand new book, The Emigrant Edge. And looking forward to seeing you guys all there. We'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about the show, as well as our list of current reads, check us out at www.theelevatedtrader.com.
Remember to subscribe and share if you found value in today's episode. See you next week.